Welcome to another edition of Spark the Conversation. This is your host, Mark the Spark, and we're going to get into today's news. We're trying to add some video to our podcast today and see if that brings up the numbers a little bit. I don't know that it's anything that special, and it's a little bit more work, I think, but it'll be like the initial start to the program where there's a learning curve at first, and then it gets a lot easier. So thanks for joining the show. Let's get into the news. All right, so the first thing we want to talk about today in the news is going to be the border. So Tom Homan, the new border czar, who's actually going to take the position by the reins, unlike when Kamala Harris, the former, it's so great to say former vice president, did not, and then later on denied that she was ever the border czar because it wasn't an official title. But it was still a job assignment given to her by the president, and she completely neglected that job duty, as she did with her vice presidency and her district attorney position in California. But he is giving some updates on the border, and it's looking pretty good already. Here's a clip.
Give me the latest numbers on the border.
Absolutely. Look, the greatest president in my lifetime, he's back. Because in 2 days, the last 24 hours, total apprehensions on the southwest border, 766. Compare that to the 10 to 12,000 Biden had at one time. CBP1 releases, 0. CHNV, Cuba, Haiti, Nicaragua, Venezuela releases, 0. Total of 766 across the entire southwest border. That is a game changer.
And it is indeed a game changer. There's also the announcement that 308 illegal migrants have been apprehended already. Basically, the first day of the Trump administration being in charge of the border. And some of them include an attempted murderer and a child molester. So these are the people that states are suing now to protect by trying to stop these actions by ICE to get the worst of the worst out of our country. Now, I've seen a lot of people talking about deportation as if it's going to be targeting families, targeting people who are here legally or have gone through a process, or just justifying the process in general. And it's kind of sidestepping the whole issue. The Biden administration has been very clear about the fact that their priority is going to be going after illegal immigrants who have committed serious crimes. And Homan did say if he runs into immigrants that are here illegally that haven't committed crimes while in the mission of going after the ones who committed serious crimes, they would deport them alongside of them. But their mission is not to go after those people. And it's definitely not to go after people who have gone through the process or are going through the legal process. So they're trying to create, of course, the media, the lamestream media, is trying to create fear out of a false narrative, as usual, because that's their go-to thing when they have nothing else. So it's a false narrative, and it's a waste of time to even talk about. That's for sure. So the deportations have started, and it is a good thing. As pertaining to the border, still, we have these. This is an older clip from before the election, but Jen Psaki, Peppermint Patty, we all remember her as the first failed press secretary for Biden, and Rachel Maddow are mocking Virginia residents for being afraid of illegal criminals, dangerous criminals, I should say, coming over the border, and in turn mocking the rest of America for being afraid of the same.
In Virginia, immigration was the number one issue.
Yes.
I mean, again, these could change in Virginia.
Well, Virginia does have a border with West Virginia.
So back to one of the items we talked about yesterday, this bishop who was doing the national prayer service yesterday in Washington, D.C. at the the cathedral there. She is an Episcopalian bishop, and she is an extreme leftist, and it seems like her wherever worship group that she's from is also the same. So there are some other clips out here going around that I'm going to play for you of this lady that basically showcase this. So let's watch those and we'll react.
So let me ask you this. You seem to have more fearlessness than anyone in Congress right now, ma'am. What made you decide to use that opportunity for this message, or didn't you have any apprehension about it?
My response, thank you, first of all, for allowing me to be with you today. My responsibility that morning, yesterday morning, was to reflect, to pray with the nation for unity. And as I was pondering what are the foundations of unity, I wanted to emphasize respecting the honor and dignity of every human being, basic honesty and humility. And then I also realized that that unity requires a certain degree of mercy and compassion and understanding. And so knowing that a lot of people, as I said, in our country right now are really scared, I wanted to take the opportunity in the context of that of service for unity to say we need to treat everyone with dignity. And we need to be merciful. I was trying to counter the narrative that is so divisive and polarizing, and in which real people are being.
So there you have it. That's our first one from The View, of course, the source of some of our best clips. Here's one of the bishop and it looks like, I don't know, maybe another bishop or minister from her community, and they're talking about the supposed hypocrisy of Donald Trump. Imagine that.
I would say that he's very sincere about his faith, but like a number of Catholics, he picks and chooses dimensions of the faith to highlight while ignoring or even contradicting other parts. There is a phrase that we have used in the past, a cafeteria Catholic. You choose that which is attractive and dismiss that which is challenging.
Or, as Thomas Aquinas would say, you allow your conscience to guide you. Right?
Is there something on the menu he's not ordering, in your view?
Well,
so to speak?
I would say there are things, especially in terms of the life issues, there are things that he chooses to ignore, or he uses the current situation as a political pawn rather than saying, look, my church believes this. I'm a good Catholic. I would like to believe this. Rather than to twist and turn some dimensions of the faith as a political advantage.
It's also possible to be a practitioner of the faith as a public leader and not require everyone that you lead in your country to be guided by all of the precepts of your faith, right?
And in my coverage of him, it seems
that's
what
how,
he believes.
That's what I would interpret.
Your concern is that he should be more explicit in his own personal belief, which is a personal opposition to abortion, but an understanding that as a public leader and in a free society, he's not to be.
So it seems like they want to play both sides of the field there. They're saying that he shouldn't be hypocritical and have different stances in public and private, and then he also should have different stances in public and private because he shouldn't force his viewpoints on other people just because he believes them. It goes all over the place. There's no consistency to what they're trying to say. It's kind of I mean, they're hypocritical in saying that, and they don't have a stance either that's solid. It's part of the norm of the left to call out what they're doing and point it at you as saying you're doing it. The other issue is, where were they during the Biden administration? I mean, he was clearly not sticking to a standard. He didn't follow his faith. If anybody, you look at Joe Biden, you look at Nancy Pelosi, who say that they're Catholic. They're the most pro-choice, pro-abortion, I would say, people out there. They're the ones that being the cafeteria Catholics, not Trump. I mean, Trump really, I don't know if he even identifies as a Catholic. He's a Christian, but these people are just, I mean, they're leftists. What do you expect? They have no standard. Here's one more clip of her. This is from 2020, just showing again that she's an activist.
Why did you want to come out here and send
their message? It is a message of a call for justice, for swift justice for George Floyd, for systemic justice for all brown and black people who have been under the knee of this country in ways that we have witnessed time and again. This is wrong. And this rising up, this spontaneous uprising of people, mostly half my age or younger, they're the ones we should be listening to.
And they're angry at the president.
They're so angry.
They're angry at the president. So what is your message to President Trump today?
Well, I've given up speaking to President Trump. We need to replace President Trump. We need leadership that will lead us in the ways that this country deserves.
Thank you.
Now we've got some people flipping out on the leftist media. Rachel Maddow, we're back to her again because, she's one of the crazy lefties that we love to focus on. And she makes it so easy. So she's talking about the January 6th rioters because, we've only been talking about it for 3 years and 4 years, I guess now, right? And we can push it a little longer. We're going to keep talking about it. But now that Trump pardoned all these people, or most of them anyways, over 1,500, maybe this can start to die off and we can not talk about it anymore because there won't be any more actions to take. I think, though, when Biden did a bunch of pardons for some pretty controversial people, that he kind of made it easier for Trump to pardon these January 6th hostages, as he called them, and not look like it's an extreme decision.
Something that we've not seen in the United States, right? This is something where you've got a law and order supposed party championing people who are in prison for beating police officers with baseball bats. I mean, we haven't seen this. But I do think if you widen the aperture, we have absolutely seen this over and over and over and over again in all modern countries where authoritarians take over. One of the things they'd first do for the last 100 years, anytime you have an authoritarian take over a democracy, is that they find people who have committed political violence on their behalf, and they free them and vindicate them and make them heroes and effectively spread the word that if you commit violence on behalf of the leader, you're above the law and you won't be held accountable for it. It's a way to terrorize the rest of the population so that unaccountable violent forces might turn up at your doorstep if you oppose this president. It's what all of these losers do. Trump has done it on day one. We knew to see it coming, but now we have to fight back for our.
There you go. So she's crazy, calling Trump a loser, calling us all losers. Personally, I think he's winning. We've seen the proof he's winning. We're all winning, and we ain't tired of winning. So he freed a lot of these January 6ers. Of course, they want to lump them all together as all people who have attacked police, all people who have done dangerous things, damage to the Capitol and breaking the law and, the worst things and fascism and overthrowing the government, insurrection, even though none of them were charged with insurrection, all the worst words that they can think of, fascists, which is what they are, and trying to create fear like they're coming for you next. We're going to go after all the people on the left now. We don't actually do that. Conservatives tend to want to stick by standards, traditions, and not be the ones that overturn all these ways that we've done things forever, because we like order and law and tradition, unlike leftists, progressives who can't stop progressing, air quotes, of course. They can't stop. So you're looking in the mirror again and imposing that on us. Okay, so a big topic that's come up now is the 14th Amendment, because Trump, through an executive order, has stopped naturalized or birthright citizenship, which means basically having anchor babies where somebody could be passing through an airport or illegally crossing a border, and now because they were pregnant, a woman, it would have to be a woman, we know that, and because they have a baby across the border in the United States or in a territory of the United States, that person would naturally be a U.S. citizen. And this comes from bad interpretation of the 14th Amendment, Section 1. I'll read Section 1 to you just in case you're not familiar with it. It says, all persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof, which is a key point, are citizens of the United States and of the state wherein they reside. No state shall make or enforce any law which shall abridge the privileges or immunities of citizens of the United States. Nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, nor deny to any person within its jurisdiction the equal protection of the laws. So like I pointed out there, the key is that they are subject to the jurisdiction of the United States and are citizens. They're saying that they're citizens in the state where they reside. So it's not just saying that it's you were born in there. It says born and subject to the jurisdiction thereof, which a non-citizen would not necessarily fall under that heading. They are just born there, but they're not really subject to the jurisdiction, and they're not necessarily don't necessarily have the same rights or protection of rights, I guess is how we should look at it, because we believe that every person, every human being has natural born rights. The difference is if they're not a citizen of the United States, those rights are not necessarily protected by the government because it is not their government because they are not a citizen. So that is a key point. Another thing I learned today about the 14th Amendment was that it started, and the intent, and especially Section 1, was slaves who were brought to America, forcefully brought to America, which is key. They were forcefully brought to America, and then when they were freed, they wanted to make sure that our government had to make sure that these people were going to be given the same rights and be considered citizens of the United States. So this clause was written for that purpose. And I think when you realize the history behind it, you would realize that people who come here willingly and probably illegally are not necessarily subject to the same rights and traditions of that clause of the amendment. So to update the California fires, which we haven't talked about in a little bit because with the inauguration happening and President Trump in office, there's been so much to talk about in other places that it hasn't been a key. But the Palisades fire, which was one of the first fires that started, is 68% contained, has burned more than 23,400 acres. Over 6,000 structures have been destroyed and 890 damaged, and 11 people have died from that specific section of the fire. The Eaton fire is 91% contained as of this morning, Wednesday, and has burned more than 14,000 acres and has killed 17, unfortunately, and 9,418 structures are destroyed and 1,073 have been damaged. So there's still risk of some of this exploding into bigger fires and danger to the public there for sure, but at least the containment has seemed to grow significantly, and they seem to have a lot better handle on it. The winds have died down to something like 30 miles an hour versus close to 100 where the gusts were before, hurricane force winds, which was a big cause of the spread and making it really hard to stop the fire. But it has definitely taken a step down, and hopefully this is a step in the right direction to fixing and helping with this. I know President Trump has announced that he's actually going to go to North Carolina, which Biden seemed to have neglected. A lot of people have actually neglected what's going on in North Carolina, which is still a catastrophic area and suffering greatly. The focus is on LA, and since there's a lot of rich people there, of course we focus on it more because they have the microphone. So Trump's going to go to both of these disaster areas and scope them out and see what they can do to help with those, supporting those areas. The other thing that this brings to mind is presidents going to disaster zones to begin with. I really don't like it. I wish they would just send representatives. I've helped deal with traffic control in some of these areas that presidents visit, and it is very, very difficult to manage. And if you were, luckily, I was never in a disaster zone where they were visiting, but it makes it hard even when it's not a disaster zone, when they're just coming to speak or visit somebody. I can only imagine when you're trying to deal with a disaster, how it could make things more difficult. So another thing we talked about already, but is still in the news going around, is this quote-unquote Hitler salute that Elon Musk did, even though it wasn't that. And you can tell by the context of the speech where he's talking, when he's talking, it has nothing to do with fascism. He says, "My heart goes out to you," and he's pointing to his heart, clutching his heart, and then pointing to the crowd. Obviously, Elon Musk is not like a normal public speaker. He's a little bit awkward. I mean, partly because he's brilliant. He's an engineer type, not a public speaker type of person. And so some of the things he does, he doesn't really think about. He's just doing it on a whim. And this is one of those things. And then they freak out because he does it twice. But he's responded now, clearly. He says, and he literally says at the end, "My heart goes out to you." So he describes the action, right? And you had Jon Stewart last night talking about, oh, he should have did a heart like this, like Taylor Swift does. I'm like, girls do that. I'm glad Elon Musk didn't do that. That's crazy. Or doing like clutching his chest and going like that. I'm glad he didn't do it, because those are weak. Am I glad he did what he did? I don't think it matters. Dude, he's doing a gesture. He's giving a speech. He's doing it off the cuff. I don't think it's a big deal. But I do think the response, actually this came from Libs of TikTok, but I believe Elon Musk replied to it. The response is great, because AOC was one of these, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez from the People's Republic of New York, unfortunately my state. And he comes out, shows this video of her doing a similar thing, but of course her speech is a lot more hate-filled when she's talking about it, more like a fascist than what Elon Musk was doing, which had nothing to do with fascism but love. So there's no audio with this clip here, but she says, "We will not bow down to that. We will not relent to that." So you can tell what she's saying is a lot more angry and forceful than what Elon Musk was doing and saying at his speech, because his was just with love and he explained what he was doing. But this is a great response from Libs of TikTok and from Elon Musk. Just great. So as President Trump gets back into the White House, he came up that Joe Biden actually followed a tradition for once. Some of the things they actually stick to, which is amazing. And he left him a note in the desk drawer in the Oval Office. And Trump was very friendly about it. And he complimented Joe about following this tradition. He says, it was a really nice one. He said, basically it was type of an inspirational letter. Enjoy it. Do a good job. He says, I think I'll show it to everybody because it was a positive thing for Joe. So he's actually, and you've seen this tradition with Donald Trump, after, over time, is that when you're his enemy, he will attack or at least respond to attacks, and he will push back when you push on him. But then once he beats you, and you basically consent to the defeat, he's very nice and speaks highly of you. So I don't think he's going to speak highly of the last 4 years, but he did speak highly of him. And he shared the letter, and this is what the letter said. Dear President Trump, as I take leave of this sacred office, I wish you and your family all the best in the next 4 years. The American people and people around the world look to this house for steadiness in the inevitable storms of history, and my prayer is that in the coming years will be a time of prosperity, peace, and grace for our nation. So it continues, may God bless you and guide you as he blessed and guided our beloved country since our founding. signed Joe Biden 1/20/25. So a nice move from Joe. Way to finish out strong with that and the welcome home. It kind of shows that some of the things that were coming out of the administration, I don't think were coming from Joe. It was clearly coming from somewhere else. Maybe we'll find out in the next couple years or so who that was. So the World Economic Forum meets again, basically a meeting of some of the world's most evil people. And Klaus Schwab, who I believe is the president of this organization, or whatever they call their leader, their fearless evil leader, and he spoke about the lack of trust that the world has in them as what they consider themselves leaders of the world. I don't think that we necessarily consider them that, but they do have a lot of influence. And I think he points to it like he sees the problem, but he's missing the cause, I think. Here's the clip.
Us, when we meet today, we also have to face an erosion of trust in our society. We all must work together to regain trust in order to progress nationally and internationally. This can only be achieved if we genuinely address the existential fears of so many, the fears of marginalized, the fears of those who are afraid of accelerating environmental degradation, and the fears of those who worry about being left out in the transition to the intelligent age.
So as you could see, he's talking about the lack of trust in them and restoring the trust, but then he talks about fear, and then fear of impact on the environment, and fear of the other kind of things that, like, no, that's not what we're afraid of. We're afraid of you. Like, you lied to us. We're afraid of that. We're afraid of you giving us misinformation. We're afraid mostly of you guys using your influence to gain power, not in like Elon Musk, because Elon Musk, see, the difference is he's trying to restore power to the people. And he's been very clear about that. And he's spent money, lost money. They want to talk about him losing money in making a bad investment in X. The whole point of investing in X was to restore the power to the people, restore freedom of speech to the people, and he lost money to do that. I think that's noble, not a bad investment. People like this guy who sounds like a villain, I take that from Ben Shapiro, who says he sounds like a Bond villain, but I think he just sounds, I mean, it could be Despicable Me, whatever, but have a guy with a thick, I believe, German accent to give the speech about trust, public trust. Maybe not your best choice there. So back to the White House, there's some interesting topics, more of a popular note, which I find very interesting. I don't know if you guys caught the introduction of Donald Trump's granddaughter, Kai Trump, who she made her debut, I think it was at the RNC, Republican National Conference, when she gave a speech about her grandpa, and she was pretty nervous. You could tell it was her debut into public life, but she's kind of must have enjoyed it because she's taken ownership of it. And it's interesting because on TikTok and some of the other video platforms, I know she's on YouTube as well, she's doing a lot of behind the scenes into her life, into her interactions with her grandfather, Donald Trump, our president, and some of the events that she's gone to. She's met Elon Musk a couple times, I think. She's been on Air Force One. Well, I don't know about Air Force One. Trump. She's been on the Trump plane. Probably not Air Force One yet. But she's a young girl. I think she maybe just turned 18. I'm not sure. 17 or 18. Yeah, she's 17. And so she's been doing a lot of behind the scenes videos. Some of her videos are amateur, like she's doing them herself. Some of them seem a little bit more professionally done, but she's giving a glimpse of her view of Donald Trump, which is her grandfather. And the interesting thing I find about this is that not only is she targeting more of the younger segment, the Gen Z, her segment of the population, she's also humanizing Trump for those who thought he was a villain or still think he's a villain. And, it's very interesting. I think Barron had a little bit to do with some of this kind of work as well when he says, you got to go on Joe Rogan, you got to do this and that. But Kai Trump has this very innocent, down-to-earth personality, which actually all the Trumps do to some extent, which is amazing considering the life that they lead. But Kai Trump has this very innocent way of analyzing and showing us the world behind the scenes in the Trump family. So it's interesting to see how her work is going to affect the view of Gen Zers on our new 47th president. Very interesting. And then on another note, when we talk about JD Vance, talking about the humanizing of Donald Trump made me think about JD Vance and how he's kind of a different public figure than we've seen in a long time, at least at this level. It was very interesting if you watched the inauguration when he was taking his inaugural oath. His wife, Usha, was standing right next to him and holding one of their children. And I was just thinking, man, I have never in my lifetime, seen a president or vice presidential candidate with like young children, which is very relatable for a lot of the segment of the United States. And so you get this connection to him to say, wow, he's one of us. He knows the pressures involved with being a family man and having a job at the same time. And he's going to understand the issues that I would like addressed. So it's very interesting to see. He's one of the youngest. I think they said he's the third youngest vice president of the United States ever. And it's interesting to see this kind of humanization of the not only the presidency, vice presidency, and the administration, but also the Republican Party in general. And I mean, you can extrapolate that to all the federal government, which is quite old. I mean, AOC is one of the younger of the Democratic Party, and I think maybe she has that effect, although she's insane, she has that effect for the Democrats. It's nice to see that maybe we're looking at livening up and making the Republican Party, conservatives in general, more relatable, which would be great, and younger as well, which I think in turn makes it more relatable. So it's great to see. These are the kind of things that I think about when I see these stories, and it makes me happy because I think it's the right move. And as we look at the cabinet picks for Donald Trump, they're moving right along. Marco Rubio was sworn in today as Secretary of State, actually it was yesterday, and he's already making moves to remove DEI from the institution. He said that all the government buildings across the world have to fly only the American flag, so no more of this rainbow flag, progress flag, or Black Lives Matter flag. We're not going to be making political statements except for, America is number one and we are the best, most powerful country in the world. So great moves to see by him. And then the Treasury nominee, Scott Bessent, clears his nomination in the committee, and so did the Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth. He cleared committee as well. So these are going to go to a full Senate vote. The amazing thing is Marco Rubio had a 99-0, so they had one person abstain from voting, but he was voted through by 99 out of 100 senators, which is crazy to even see. You would think that, they know they can't stop him, Democrats, and probably are worried that worse could come. Not that they could stop him anyways, but still they usually vote against everybody with Trump just to make a stance and say that they're fighting back or pushing back, fighting to power or whatever they say they're doing. So they've Scott Bessent and Pete Hegseth have cleared committee. I believe they're going to be going to the full vote tomorrow, and then hopefully we can start cleaning up the Treasury, and we can clean up the Defense Department as well, and start, making America great again. All right. That's all I have for today. Thanks for joining me. I'd appreciate if you follow and comment and share with your friends and come back tomorrow for another edition. Now, go out and volunteer for something meaningful and spark the conversation.